What a blessing, because money's not my driver either. But, it's important. It offers a lot of freedom as well as resources.
Focus on like being healthy just to be healthy, so I can or have it right, have energy, play with my kids and other things. It's not for the sake of just health itself. Like health for what? Money for what?
You're Mr. Big Time as far as I'm concerned, not just for predictable revenue, which is genius, and not just from impossible to inevitable. I had lunch with Julia Roberts. We were with a group of 4 or 5 of us. We're all giving to charity, and she managed 5 charities. My question to her was, you manage 5 different charities. I don't even manage one. I just contribute. How do you manage your acting career and these 5 different charities? And how do you find the priority? So how do you do 10 kids?
In some ways it's easy to answer, but that's actually an honest answer. Year to year it changes. Like the day-to-day answer, which is could be like schedules, and those first 2 years are just brutal. We always hired help. We're both very active parents. Even when I worked at home, all these answers are layered. Like I had to make a lot of money, which is kind of like crazy.
That's why I called you Big Time. I want to find out what drove your passion, because I have a passion for children. Like I paid for over 200 smiles for Operation Smiles, and they're all kids.
I see so much of life in making money in families is more dealing with people, dealing with yourself. It's not good or bad. It's just a bit different. Like I said, you mentioned God. Now I believe in a higher power after seeing the complexity, like the family and going through things, and never expected to have a big family. Got to the point where it's kind of done with this and just doing sales consulting and just making money for the family. It's something I was good at, but something I didn't want to do anymore. Didn't have a enthusiasm or interest in. Kind of been ground out of me.
The sales machine, Rankins.
Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, Aaron Ross, is a globally recognized sales advisor and author of Predictable Revenue and From Impossible to Inevitable, the sales Bible of Silicon Valley. His methodologies have powered growth at Salesforce to over $100 million just in the beginning, before it was a $1 billion company. He's worked with Twilio, many others, generating billions of dollars in revenue. He's on a new journey now. He's a board member for several startups. Aaron helps sales leaders adapt to AI disruptions now and changing buying behavior, offering fresh strategies to thrive in a rapidly shifting market. Welcome to the show, Aaron Ross.
There we go. Thank you.
Let's talk 2019 predictable revenue. And everybody out there, you better buy the book. You better buy 10 highlighters, because you're going on every page, you're going to get golden nuggets of how to transform any business, not just a software business, but any business. And then from there, from impossible to inevitable. And both of them are copyrighted in 2019.
Yeah, the original predictable revenue was like 2010, 2011, and original impossible was at 2016.
Okay, got it. Because I've read this cover to cover to cover, and now I'm in impossible to inevitable, and I'm loving every minute of it, because I've made $1 million mistakes, and I love how you took your previous experience and failures and you turn them into winners, and then winning systems.
Hopefully we all do better than taking your prior failures and doing the same mistake again.
Yeah, I absolutely.
I don't know, John, like for you, think about your worst failures in life, did those end up powering your later successes? Because that's kind of what happened with me.
Yeah, in actuality.
Yeah, both business and in marriage.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard when relationships fail.
Yeah, and they always, all you know is that every relationship will end, whether in marriage, right? It's either divorce, it's called marriage, divorce or death. Like that's inevitable. But yeah, I don't know. We have a 22-year-old who just started, we have some kids who are old enough to have relationships, and when they start, I was like, okay, buckle up. Especially when you're younger and you think, oh my God, this is like, that new relationship energy. Like, I'm walking on water for a while, which is great. And before you're jaded and older, but also before you get into kind of the regular, nuts and bolts of making relationships work, whether romantic or parental.
Yeah. I think the most painful lessons are the ones that you don't learn from. And then it just comes back again because you didn't learn.
Yeah. But I will give you a specific example. Like I had a business fail 2000, that's probably late 20s. And, this isn't a predictable revenue book, but it was so painful. We raised a few million in venture and there was like this death march at the end to try to sell the company and when it was going under. And I go home on Fridays, and I was still single at this point, so I just would like play video games and drink some, I don't know, like a vodka tonic or something just to kind of numb that pain. Basically the dream died. But through that I was like, oh, I need to learn sales. I'd done selling I'd sold door to door, ad sales and painting and things. But entrepreneurially, I hadn't like learned how to build a sales team, a professional team. So like, that's why from that sent me to Salesforce. That knocked over a whole bunch of other, there's always a series of dominoes, right? And that wasn't the be first domino, wasn't the last, but it was another domino to send me to take the lowest level job, any sales job at salesforce.com when they were small, 150 people. But like that failure, which is so painful, started me on the sales path, which then later led to books and later led to a lot of money. But yeah, it was like at the time, so painful.
Yeah. And I love how you were so honest and transparent about your failures. So many people, and a lot of them, online now, there's a lot of false prophets out there that talk about how you can get rich quick and all their different methodologies they're selling. Whereas you come from an approach of, look, I screwed this up. It was super painful. I had to realign. I had to reset, regardless of the judgment or, of colleagues or whatever. I took a sales job from owning my own company and actually raising money. And then I figured it out. And then you figured it out step by step. And I love how you go through your methodology of practicing and trying new things out to figure out what worked, especially like just cold calling. It's uncomfortable for you and it's uncomfortable
as an engineer.
for them. And so what could work better? And then in the early days, you started just going after cold accounts and or reaching out in a different way. What was the biggest epiphany when you started reaching out in a different way, and not just the methodology, but what was the trigger to get them really involved in wanting to have a conversation?
Well, for that specific answer, because there's a bit of a bigger, for that specific like tactic was, I find a lot of this in business is me kind of saying, okay, I want to do this next thing, whether it makes sense or not. I kind of want to do this thing. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm just going to, I'll take this step. And so in that case, I'm doing this. How do I reach out to cold accounts? I was an engineer when I was younger. In my, after college, I did investment banking, and my main feedback was often like, I wasn't verbally comfortable. Talking was, I wasn't like that great at communicating.
Awkward
initially. Yeah, exactly. So, so reaching out to cold accounts, and it was one of these things where I was like, okay, I'm just going to try the next thing. I'm not going to try. I know what I want to do, which is to figure this thing out. I'm not sure I even exactly understand it, but it just feels important. So I'm going to try calling people. And that didn't work. Then I'm trying to try emailing people. I'm going to try this. And then it just kind of dawned on me once I had some early conversations, just this, if I'm reaching out to these bigger companies, because I was reaching out to bigger companies. It wasn't like local small ones, small businesses. This was like targeting public companies with at least several hundred people or bigger, up to, multi-billion-dollar companies. So for that type of company, I just noticed, I'm having sometimes it's just kind of tricky getting to the right person. I'll talk to people and they're not the right person. And so I was like, well, I guess maybe I'll just try. I got to break this into two pieces. First is this, how do you eat an elephant? Small bites. So this thing is like, well, first I need to figure out who the right person is before trying to get a meeting or a response. That made it easier to say, if I call, I'll just ask them, rather than trying to ask them for an appointment, I'll ask them like, who's the right person? The specific phrasing can change, but that was the goal. It wasn't to get a meeting. It was just to like find out information. Or if I'm going to email, this is probably before LinkedIn. Again, I'll kind of reach out with this idea of getting a referral or getting information. I remember still talking about when I was doing trainings later, which is, hey, you want to put on your Columbo hat. And if you're too young to know who Columbo is, he was just a famous TV detective. So you want to put on, kind of a detective hat, which is your goal is not to necessarily get a meeting sometimes, but, bigger picture is get information. Because if you get information about this account, who's there, the different roles, who's the right person, then you can make much better decisions. So in that example is, I have this problem. How can I break it down into smaller parts and tackle each part a bit differently so that it was easier to solve as I went? And, it took me 3 or 4 months to kind of get the gist of this basic process to kind of do cold, outreach through cold calling and cold emailing to these bigger companies and get quality meetings and build sales pipeline.
Yeah, and you figured it all out. I say you cracked the code. And then when you cracked the code, you early on identified, wait a minute, I can't just do this on my own. And or
Well, never
I'm
wanted
good.
to.
Yeah, I never wanted to. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
yeah, never the plan. I was just like, I'll figure this out. But then, I want to, at that point, I guess after I did that, I was like, oh, let's build a team. That took a year.
And you identified the SDR. Like, I think you coined that. I don't know if you coined it, but you're like, you know what? I don't want account executives, business development managers, or, higher level people that can get on a call and do, handle a decision maker. It's better I get a junior on and just qualify whether or not this account is even going to have fruit.
Yeah, waste some. Yeah, I didn't coin the term, and I didn't create the job. What I did was though turn the, because there have been junior telemarketing jobs, appointment setting, and like that wasn't new. But what I did do is say, let's create this job. Let's make it work really, really well and kind of systematize it. And wasn't the first to do that, but I think I was one of the first people. Well, I think I was the first to say, like, you have to specialize it's not something you can do. You need to specialize so that if you are going to do prospecting, the function doesn't necessarily matter. If you're going to do prospecting, well, let me step back. Think about any sports team. Do you know any sports teams that don't put people in specific positions so they can do that one thing really well?
Yeah, no.
There might be someone, I don't know any, you got attackers and whatever the different versions. You usually have people who attack, people who defend, lots of different sports. But in sales, the tradition was, and there's reasons, but everyone kind of like does their own prospecting, does their own selling, maybe even manages their own accounts and doing many things, most things poorly. Maybe there's one thing they do really well. And if you have, say, 10 salespeople, once in a while, you can get a unicorn, a salesperson who can do all that really well somehow, but you can't build a team of people like that. Or it's really hard. I guess in financial services, that's kind of their whole model. So to me, it's like, well, if you create this system, rather than trying to hire and manage a team of rock stars, what if you make the system the rock star, where you could have a good system and then you could hire good people who don't have to be the best, but they could be good, and then everything works well. So that included specializing. You've got prospectors who prospect and, maybe inbound lead qualifiers who give marketing leads, and closers who sell new customers, and then people who manage everything after that. And if you do that and you have to do that, then everything else gets easier. So I think that was not a new idea, but a new is saying, like, you have to do this in this way to make it work. Because like you said, having your highest cost people do low value prospecting doesn't make any sense. Not to say that, there was a blog post or some article which is, salespeople shouldn't prospect. Okay, it was being a bit dramatic. Salespeople should prospect a little bit, to a small number of key accounts. And again, there's going to be jobs where salespeople should prospect. If you're, a salesperson in a territory going door to door, and there's always ways, but you're just trying to say, in this case, last to tie this up is, it's not that you should do these jobs where I lay them out. It's the principle is focus. I wrote about this in the Impossible book. Was you may not, the way your business works, B2C, B2B to ABC, may not need these jobs, prospecting, inbound, closing, post sales. But it's like, what are your jobs to be done, and how can you divide and conquer with your team so that people are doing fewer things better, not spreading themselves too thin? And if you do that as the guiding principle, then everything else will be easier.
Amen. And then it's sustainable and scalable, because you can't scale chaos, and you cannot scale rock stars. No. I've been in sales 30 years, and I, paperboy as a kid, mowing lawns, and it's a lot of work. But when you move into building and scaling teams, you can't scale rock stars, but you can scale a system. You can scale a process. And I love how you cut it up into, look, not everybody has to be a rock star in closing big accounts. You could be a rock star in prospecting the right individuals. And that simple methodology can be easily duplicatable and replicatable to scale.
Yep.
And that's what I saw that you did that, a lot of other people didn't do. And you did it, and you called it Outbound 2.0. And you did it for Salesforce, who's still number one in the world. I had Mark Roberge on, total respect, but their methodology and his directive and mandate that he got from the owner of HubSpot, even though he became a partner there, was, we're not doing any advertising. We're going to do blogs. We're not going to reach out to people. We're going to do a lot of content, and let them come to us.
Which made sense in the early stages of HubSpot. I don't remember when they switched, but they were doing outbound prospecting. I think there's a few years, I couldn't tell you if it was like late 2000s or early 20s. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. When there's a between HubSpot, which is the kind of like, let's do inbound marketing, marketing people love, and they just come to you because you don't want to go outbound and interrupt them. Like there's a whole that type of thing, which, if you know anything.
That worked in a period of time. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because times have changed. Predictable revenue and the methodologies used then still work. Some of what HubSpot did work, and HubSpot ended up giving away the free CRM because they knew they couldn't compete with Salesforce anymore. Actually, Salesforce invested in HubSpot. But then when Salesforce figured out what HubSpot was doing and becoming a competitor and getting bigger, they decided, well, we're just going to give shit away for $1. And so Mark said, for us to compete, we had to make the lead magnet free, which is the CRM, free forever. Yeah. He goes, we had to adopt because Salesforce would have buried us.
Yep, and I think they're doing really well overall. Not nearly as big as Salesforce.com, but
right, I think they're worth $30 billion.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. That's a good check.
Yep. So
you could have 30 kids with that kind of coin.
No. Yeah, it's funny. It's not, our society today, it's not even money. It's probably for people not to divert too much from money, but it's not always money. Lots of people don't want to have kids or more kids because of money. Fair enough. It's stressful. But even when people have a ton of money, they often don't have more kids anyway, because I'm not sure. But I think it's so easy to see what you would give up, like time, energy, or money, freedom, to have kids. And it's hard often to see what you get if you haven't had them. Even I can emphasize, because if, now our youngest is 7.5, I have so much more time and energy to myself for a little bit of sanity, which I didn't have for like 10 years. And if we had another baby, I'm not saying we wouldn't, but I could see the trade-off of like, going back, back into the trenches. But having 10 kids it's amazing. But if I went back, like I told you before, it's like if you're willing to beat yourself on the head with a hammer for 10 years to get there.
Yeah, and I agree with you. You shared a story earlier about breast milk. Me and my lady, we're religious that we wanted breast milk. She breastfed as long as she could, man. Year and 3 months, 4 months, and then it just didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And
not everyone can do that, but that's fine. Like, there's no perfect way to do it.
There's no. Yeah, for me and her, and I'm blessed to have her because we both made him first. And sleepless nights. I was traveling the world. I was doing keynotes and selling seminars as well as running my business and building the software. And it just got. And I, as soon as I literally, she let me know that I was becoming a dad the day before I was flying to Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And then I came back, got the book, right? And then literally did a book tour in America, ended up at Harvard, did a speech at Harvard, tore up the speech and talked about life. I was supposed to talk about, getting this award of making a difference in Southeast Asia. And I'm like, I'm not coming back to Harvard. I never even went to college. It's amazing I'm here. So I pulled out the what is that called? I had it with me. The ultrasound at Harvard.
Oh yeah.
I changed and I said, what? Life is beautiful. Life will knock you down. Life's unfair. And I talked about life and business. And then at the end, I said, but at the end of the day, life is beautiful. And I showed my ultrasound. I said, so, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, just keep that thought in mind in 10 years when you got a teenager too.
Yeah. Anyway, thank God it's on video, because they thought to video it. And the reason why I share that is because, everything I do literally is I want to make a difference and have purpose, because I think that's, for me, the meaning of life. Maybe not for everybody else, but to be purposeful and help people. Like, to me, sales is a service. It's something I'm doing for you, not to you.
Yeah, I think that's a good attitude to have around it. You can be doing the same actions with a different intention or attitude of helping or manipulating one or the other.
Yeah, because I have no interest in selling you anything. If it's not going to help you, let's not waste each other's time. Like, let me figure
to be fair,
out.
It's not uncommon, but it's probably less common than people who are trying to sell you something and all they care about is getting money out of you. And whether it works for you or not, they don't give a shit.
Yeah, which, I think those are not really sales people or sales professionals. They're just sleaze bags, right?
Yeah, but that's kind of what the whole industry got tarred with. Kind of like internet marketers, right? There's certain industries where people are very focused on just money, and it's easy to attract a lot of people who don't have scruples, even though there's always tons of people who have values around, like service, helping people, meaning, and money is helping kind of power that. But I think that's for people to realize, money is can be a great thing used for helpful things or not. You can do sales, you can do marketing, anything you do with that intention of what you want to get out of it. Sales isn't manipulative. It can be. Sales can be helpful. Marketing can be manipulative or helpful. It's like, what do you bring to it?
Yeah, the framework I created is called Next Level Sales. Take people from where they're at, ultimately, to where they want to be.
It's just to train people, right? It's not that's not the sales process, or is it the
It's a methodology within the process. So I'm a firm believer, like you, in systems, and number one, and then number two, having a process for people to follow. You can still have your own personality. You can still, come from a place and space, whether you're a driver or a supporter based on your DISC assessment or whatever. I'm not advocating you change who you are, but if you want to work for
that anyway.
Exactly. It will never work. That's called force, right? So I'm a firm believer in empowering people with a process and or a system that they can follow. But from my psychology, as far as what we're aligned with, is service, solve problems, and make sure they're satisfied. And that comes from Zig Ziglar from years ago, right? So if you come from service and you want to help people and you're there to solve a problem, and you solve that problem and you make sure they're satisfied, they'll keep coming back to you forever. So how do we create a framework to do that? We'll find out what is their needs first. And this is next level. What is their needs? What are the economic factors involved? How much they can invest or whatever? And then what are the X factors that are going to stop the deal from moving forward or hold them back from making a decision? Or how many people have to make the decision? And then the timing of when you're going to make an offer that's going to make sense to them. And it's similar to a framework called NEAT from Richard Harrison, who's a colleague, has been on the show. But I literally look at my journey, and if you look at gap selling from Keenan, he's like, you got to close that gap. But for me, if you want to come with the psychology to help people, right? You come from service, you make it all about them. We don't talk about our company. We don't talk about how many years we've been in business. We don't talk up our product.
Yeah,
we do discovery. We find out.
It's me.
Yeah. So for me, it's all about taking people to the next level. And as long as you have that intention, cool, you can work here. And I can show you the process and show you how to have a good time in actually helping people. And that's where I think, especially like with AI now, and if you look at what you've done, and I love what you've done. I mean, I don't think you, Mark Roberge, and there's sales legends out there, but they can take credit for a lot of success and or helping others. But there's no greater examples than you and Mark for really scaling up multi-billion-dollar companies. And it's a fact. Your methodology, your psychology worked, putting in the methodology work, and now I want to put that into technology.
Yep.
And AI
you got me rhyming. You had the skin care and the hair care and the car care first. Now you got the ologies, the methodology, to the technology. Yeah, I don't know exactly what you said, but it's like, okay, you got some alliteration.
Yeah, and the reason why is I love to train. And so, there's all this different technical jargon now that I got involved with building and scale. Oh yeah. I didn't even know what an SDR was, dude. I did sales for 30 years and I'm like, SDR, BDM. What's a chief revenue officer? What does that dude do? Like, I'm a sales leader. I'm not a manager. I'm a leader. I show up every fucking day. So I don't get all of this different terminology, and I get it. It's the corporate world and academics wanting to prove that diploma works, but I'm all about figuring stuff out and helping people. So I didn't even understand a lot of this. And now There's these functional requirement documents to implement and do business process reviews. And I'm like, what? Anyway, I learned it all in the last year because I implemented my first $200,000 client. And I've never went to college, never built software, but I just know we can, everything. You said some things are intuition. When I talk to my son, it's everything is figure outable. And I didn't even make that up, you know?
If you just you have the confidence to figure it out.
Yeah, we figure stuff out. And you guys did it and built billion-dollar companies. So I have immense respect, but I want to talk about now the AI, and it's really just AI is not the future. It's already now. It's already happening. And we're looking at incorporating AI into the sales machine to add more value for our clients. But how has things changed now when you see things? And I'm going to get into, you built a partnership from predictable revenue to impossible to inevitable. And now we have AI, and you talk about family and you got to earn money, especially when you got 10 kids. Hey folks, if you're enjoying this episode and you're picking up what I'm putting down and what the guests are actually putting out there, do me a favor, like and comment what you liked about the episode, or even comment what would you like to hear? What topics would you like to hear in the future? Because believe me, it matters. I read absolutely every single one of them, and I want to bring you more and more value to help companies scale so that we can grow this podcast to make a bigger difference. Now let's get back to the show. From here to here, how did it change?
Let's tie it a bit together because, I have a talk kind of about the future I've worked on. The title right now, and probably change because I love it, is, how to create predictable revenue in an unpredictable world. And, I think with those books or in the last bunch of years, you could say, hey, we have a business. Let's say we have a business and there's a product and we want to put in a go-to-market motion. We want to sell and market it. And there's a lot of playbooks or processes or techniques that you could just kind of copy and paste. Although, of course, you always have to iterate it, but you kind of say, look, some company did it this way, and we're just going to basically copy what they did, and it would probably work. And that's changing for a variety of reasons. Fundamentally, if I go back to a lot of, even this last year, I talked to a lot of sales leaders from around the world. And what a lot of them said, marketing leaders, sales leaders, revenue leaders, and they said is everything is getting harder. Response rates are down across, whether it's in marketing or whether it's in sales, and churn is up. So customers are leaving faster. And there was a slowdown recession too. So churn was up. Sales cycles are taking a bit longer. Response rates for sales and marketing are down. Salespeople are getting ghosted more often by prospects and customers. All these factors, right? And there's some reasons for that. There's not one reason, but I'd say there's a few major reasons, and most of them are not going away. So, for example, the world is more chaotic, less safe, less predictable. I think COVID really broke that open. The sense of you think you can have some plan. You used to feel like, I used to feel like, okay, I can kind of guess at what the next few years will bring. No, people, that illusion has been dispelled. So people still feel like that bit of unsafeness in the world. What's next? And that's going to continue because as the world gets more connected, the chaos factor will increase because one thing in one part of the world will just ripple faster to the other parts. There's a generational change, right? So now you're getting younger buyers and the buyers and sellers who are of this kind of younger generation growing up with being more digital first. And so, they're not going to just take a sales meeting, a buyer, because they need to learn something. Like, well, do I actually need this to learn something? Can you send a video? Can you send a thing? Do I want to look online? So the bar to get a sales meeting is going to go up to justify the time spent. So that's affecting things. There's just noise. So another third trend is just, there's always going to be increasing noise in the world, right? There's more channels, more content, more messages, more stuff, right? That's inevitable from the way technology works and how it's easier to make technology and cheaper to send messages. And so the clutter in email boxes, messaging boxes, online screens, that's always going to be there. So getting that attention is going to be more competitive. Your main competitor is not actually like a true competitor. It's just, for someone's attention, all that stuff they deal with. So there's all those things are combining. And then you have AI on top of it. So to me, if I step back, right, I think, there is a parallel between when I started at Salesforce and created predictable revenue. And what that was I'm figuring out this process to get appointments. I don't want to have to wonder how I'm going to make my quota every month. How can I solve this once so it just keeps working? So now is the case is, if techniques didn't work, techniques from 2 months ago may not work today, right? Because things are changing, or, from last year, the half-life of techniques and tactics is shortening. Because if something works, it just gets spread around faster, which means more people see it, which means it doesn't work as well. Outbound, inbound marketing, ads, whatever. So for me, I'm like, if I was going to solve this once, so we have this unpredictable world, who knows what's happening with AI, everything else, or when the next kind of COVID type thing is. And now, like, our old home area in Los Angeles just went up in flames, basically, even yesterday. So to me, the thing to invest in, like, one thing that if you invest in it, there's not just one thing, but one of the things you can invest in, no matter what happens, it will be valuable, it will help you succeed, is relationships. So to me, one of the keys of the future, and I think where my lens is people in, no shocker, no, it's not the only thing, of course, because you could invest in technology and so on. But, with all the change in how you stand out in the future, people and relationships are an area that will always serve you well, no matter what happens, because the shortest path between 2 points it's just trust, right? So that's why if you have a big audience, or if you have, it doesn't even have to be a big audience. If you have any audience, or if you know people and they trust you, it doesn't matter if you're doing AI or not, or there's COVID or not, or you're going to have more leeway and more opportunities and more advantages. So that might look like, there's a lot of ways that can translate to a business. And this is kind of the part where I'm still developing the playbooks. But what that can look like is how your relationships with your internal team, if you have a team. Because if you're a CEO, the way you treat your team will set the example for how they treat their customers. So that can be then, or the relationships that you salespeople or people who sell have with the customers. It can look like how, if you say you're a leader, again, how you're treating your own people. It could be how you present yourself at scale through marketing, content, social media content, whatever form of content. So you can create relationships at scale. Taylor Swift obviously is, a master at that. So it doesn't have to be, hey, having coffee with somebody. It could be any way that you're forming a bond of trust with someone, whether you know them or not. Like, I have 30,000 connections on LinkedIn. Most of those people I don't know. They know me. No, I mean, but they know me as an author. I may not know them, and that's okay. So in relationships could be a lot of SaaS companies are investing in community, in partner ecosystems, events where they're getting people together, often in person. Sometimes it's virtual, but they're getting people. It's not necessarily even a webinar present. It's often could be a mixer where they have prospects and customers talking, or just customers talking with each other. So there's lots of ways you can strengthen relationships and stand out as a brand or as an individual by building your relationships. So there's one last area. I think the most practical area that will be the most kind of playbookable is referrals, because even in these books, right, I wrote, I'm like, word of mouth is the hardest thing to grow. It's the best, but it's hard. But now that outbound and inbound is often a lot less reliable, sometimes it works, but there's always this like, is it going to work next month? I believe referrals are going to be as or more important than ever. Well, and what doesn't happen in lots of companies is often, because there is specialization of salespeople, and I helped create that, of course. You have the people with really strong customer relationships. Let's call them the customer success team. It could be, or let's just use that label, or because it could be account management. Or they have these relationships, that the people motivated who need business are the salespeople or prospecting team. And so it's a lot of steps, and people don't do this, which is, how do I work with the customer success team to get customers to refer me to the people I want to talk to? It's kind of like a bit complicated. It doesn't have to be. So that's an area I'm looking to kind of come up with a better solution, at least for SaaS companies, in the next maybe even few months. I'm not really sure. But relationships to me are one of the areas, or at least I'm interested in doubling down on. And that also, if we kept going, which that's fine, could inform again, how well do you know yourself? What are you actually interested in? How do you kind of connect with people or not? Are you just kind of parroting all the same stuff out there, like kind of copying what's popular, or are you really kind of following your own interests, your own hunches, your own path to kind of say something or be something that unique and interesting and different than everything else that is getting copied faster than ever by AI?
Yeah, I love that. Long-term wealth is about doubling down on relationships. That's, as a sales leader, it's refreshing that you say that, because it matters. So
Yep.
many people are out there just looking for a commission, and they call it commission breath, right? Or you show up and throw up,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of terminology out there. I love taking the complicated and making it simple. That's why I created Next Level Sales. Sales don't have to be hard. Serve. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm not good at sales. And I'm like, well, uh,
Yeah, I
I'm not
think
going
they.
to argue with you, but do you
Yeah,
like helping people? Like, what's
yeah,
wrong with helping someone? And then I
yeah.
can totally shift their perspective and their paradigm for understanding. Like, we go through all these different meetings and there's different methodologies in the software with customization, with implementation. And I look at all of these methodologies and the terminology becomes complicated. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just call it DAD. And everybody's like, what do you mean, dad? Yeah, we're just here. You call it business process review and you have to have your functional requirement documents. But what we're doing
The
here,
implementation schedule with the waterfall terminology and the dashboard. I mean, I remember.
yeah, I'm like, aren't we just defining, aligning to design and then implement? That's called daddy. And I'm a dad, so that resonates. So
Yeah.
let's just design, right? Define what it is you want, what it is you need. Let's align what we're going to do and document is what you wanted. And then from that alignment, design it and then implement. So we'll start with dad, and then you'll realize daddy works. It works in my house too. So I love taking the complicated and making it simple. And I look forward to how you're going to simplify what you're doing. Curiosity. You wrote the second book with Jason Limkin,
Mhm.
and I follow SaaStar. And I'm just a sponge to all of these different organizations trying to get along and still in the lab myself. And like I said, I just got my first big client, and that was offline. And funny enough, because I want to figure out, you've got 10 kids, you're really busy, not just what's next for you, but getting involved in getting equity in building something that could be sustainable and scalable, and or having an exit, like Jason does lots of exits. But what led you to Jason and getting involved with Impossible to Inevitable and knowing about SaaStar? Why don't you get involved? That's the first part. And then second, why don't you, I know you're joining other startups or leading people in startups or other businesses on the board to where
Well,
you own a piece for sustainable wealth as well.
yeah, kind of. Yeah, so the SaaStr thing, I met Jason Lemkin before he started SaaStr. And I was in Palo Alto. I grew up in Palo Alto. Before Palo Alto was, when I grew up there, it was the 70s, so like sleepy little town, nothing. And then at some point I saw him writing. We made my friends on Facebook or something, and he was writing started to blog. And I was like, his stuff is great. And then I was like, okay, I need to do another book. So I'm doing another book. I got honestly, because I had a family and, need to keep, it's like, I need to make more money. Always need to make more money. I'm making lots of money, but it's never enough. I reached out to him because I just like, oh man, his stuff is great. What if we did one together? That was it. And he liked my stuff. And we're like, yeah. So I used a lot of his content. I did most of the book to actually putting it together. He got really busy that year putting his first SaaStr conference on. And I couldn't tell you if half the content is his stuff or a third, or it fits so well together. It's a great fit. And I think I was really good about because he has a lot of like advanced topics.
Yeah.
Especially like, if we just do a book that's really kind of like a primer, again, like that Bible idea, if this is meant to be like a growth book for executives. So if predictable revenue is really, if you are a, sales person, sales leader, or a CEO who's selling, sales Bible. And this book was be kind of like any C-level or executive or founder who needs kind of a bigger picture about like, what does it take to grow a company. So in China, they had they renamed it from 1 to N. Peter Thiel wrote a book from 0 to 1. Right? So how do you go from nothing to like something? So this was the book, which is you have something. How do you get, grow a lot of? And so that book came out. What was the second question you had? It was around.
So that's the first part of it, and
Yeah.
and brilliant. And then the second part of it is you're around these people, and you're around Jason.
Startup, right?
Yeah,
Equity.
and now you work with startups, and I know from your serendipity documents and the stuff you shared with me about helping other companies, not just being an author. Now you still advise.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of why? I mean, you see these people in SaaS exiting. They're building them, they're exiting, and they're getting tens of millions of dollars or 10x on their annual recurring revenue.
Really rare. That's really rare. I need to leave the sales consulting side in this other business. I had a business called Predictable Revenue with a partner. it just wasn't working out with him and I need to do something different. So then the answer is, okay, well, what do I do next to make money? And so naturally advising companies and looking at boards was something I was interested in doing. And I felt like, okay, I could do that. I'd be like, that type of work feels at the time easier to do, closer to what I'm known for versus I'm just going to use things like writing novels, right? Now, turns out I joined like 4 boards. Some I was getting paid for, some not. And, I think joining boards sounds, growing up, it's like sounds prestigious and you can make, you can make a lot of money at it. And for some I did, some not. Some boards were really interesting because I was learning and they're smaller, and some were just boring AF. And it's like, I really don't like this as a thing. I've joined a couple because I like them, and it's like, okay, keep my hand in, I'm kind of learning, and it's good people, but I don't want to do a bunch of boards. Okay, so I'm still on this journey of like, what do I actually want to do that I like to do whether if I wasn't paid, but I still do this. So boards sometimes based on people, situations, so on. Consulting, not so much, pretty rare. I'm like, okay, I realized, I wanted to coach people. I love books. I want to write new books, different topics, right? Income operating system is one, Eat, Shit, and Grow, and then be some others. I'd like to coach people on doing their own books. So that actually still feels really interesting, although I quite haven't figured out how to do that in a way that fits how I want to do it. And I'll give you one example. I think this will helpful is, it started out with this, I think so the backstory was we wanted to buy this other property out west in Scotland, didn't have the money. So like, okay, if I launch like some retreats, I can make money to buy this place. Okay, do I do sales retreats of some kind? And one of these ideas were like, or author retreats. And so through doing this, I talked to some people who were like, oh yeah, we want your help in like writing a book. I was like, oh, okay, that resonates with the market. That feels good to me. I've been interested in that for a long time, but timing wasn't right. And I was messaging with people on LinkedIn, and they'd send, hey, I have this book idea. And I'd look at the idea like, oh, wow, yeah, it's too general. It felt very easy to give them useful feedback to sharpen their idea and how they would do it. And I was like, I like doing that. And I can remember this little feeling of, I liked doing that. And that little subtle feeling was really important, those little clues. And it turns out it's really not the right time to do much of it. I still think I will do more of that. I just can't say when yet. But this last 3 years-ish, it's kind of looking for those little clues and to kind of continue to build more clarity on like, what do I want to do in terms of what area do I want to work in? How do I want to work in there? And, how am I and a third area is like, how am I going to make money at it? And I'm still evolving that. And so boards is a small part of that. Industry sometimes, consulting, no. So there is like some consulting and stuff, but I do through partners if there is something. So again, I'm kind of like clear on, I want to do new books. I want to coach people on how to do their books. I like to partner. So partnering is a big thing for me. I like working with people. And by partnering, it means, for example, I've got a business in Brazil and I've got a different sales consulting business, and the partner runs it all, and I get like a percentage. So I help with like ideas, content, and advice, and some introductions and things, but they kind of run it and they own it. So I'm still figuring all this out. Now, the end game is to make more money doing things I really like to do than I did doing sales consulting, which I was great at, but I didn't have that it didn't feed my soul the same way. And I worked with some good people, but it wasn't, I just didn't. It was, reason, season, and lifetime. It was like a season. Now I'm on to a new season. And so I'm looking for, again, it's like, and I want to write fiction. That's more for fun. Could I make money at some point? Yeah, but that's more of a creative exercise that would be completely different than writing nonfiction books. So I'm kind of drawn to these different areas. And it's, again, there hasn't been like one lightning bolt. There's been lots of little clues, some bigger than others, to kind of evolve this. And I still got to make money. I got rent to pay. I got this, that, the other. So it's not like I made so much money that I don't have to worry about that. So I'm still there. And what I'm doing is trusting it's all going to work out. Again, going back to this idea of now, after so many years of this, it's like I do believe 100% in a higher power, that everything leads to another thing. And when you get knocked down, it's because you need to learn a lesson to get to the next step. Although that next step might be the next month or might be 10 years from now. And it's all evolving as it should. It needs to.
Amen. And do you make royalties and stuff off your books is that predictable revenue or very unpredictable revenue?
No, it still is. Like, the impossible to inevitable is less. I worked with a publisher, so there's less. And, there's some off of that, not as much. The predictable revenue book sells more, and it was self-published, so I get, I still probably make, mid 5 figures a year, if not, so I still make a decent. If I was single and young, I could almost live off of that. But as it is, it's a small fraction. Maybe it pays for our food.
That won't even pay for your dog food now.
Yeah,
You got
So
5 dogs and 10 kids, and I'm sure the kids aren't going hungry. Man, I'm absolutely loving this. I love the monthly recurring revenue thing. I love the ARR thing. I love software. I really do. And I love the fact for me. Go ahead.
I was thinking too, it's it's one of these things where it's easy for younger people or people new to say, oh, I need to build something that does recurring revenue. But sometimes to get there, you have to start with things that are non-recurring and unscalable and very manual to learn enough that you can kind of evolve that. I mean, sometimes you can make a jump, but I think people are often so afraid to, I don't want to sell my, like maybe younger people, or I don't want to sell my time, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to get a job, or like they're so scared of trying these things that might give them really important tools to get to the place they want to get to. So it's just kind of be open to whatever is there you need to do. Like, I think one of the lessons I love to share is that when I went from being a CEO of a company, which failed, but still, to taking this entry level job, I didn't let ego get in my way. I was like, I need to learn this skill. It's not going to pay shit, but I need to learn the skill, and I don't care what people think. I don't care. I need to learn the skill.
Yeah. And you said, the first book, the first predictable revenue came out about 2010. Obviously you iterated and this is the latest edition, but in saying that, essentially, was it just a playbook that you built within Salesforce while you were figuring it all out, and then it just evolved into it is predictable revenue?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it is. Unfortunately, the irony is I never had enough predictable revenue to support the family, because I made a conscious choice. So actually, if I step back, and there'd be years where it's like, okay, even if I got a job, and by the way, jobs can be great. There's pros and cons of, I mentioned this income operating system book's hopefully coming out this year. The essence is talking about the pros and cons of 3 ways to make money. Employment, part-time, full-time, pros and cons of that. Pros and cons of freelancing. People might get excited about consulting and setting your own hours, but unpredictable income. And pros and cons of investing, which includes having your own business. And I made a conscious choice where, if I could make, even if I could have gotten a job, which not very employable, I could even make a lot, like $300,000 a year. But by consulting and having unpredictable income, because often lumpy stuff, I might make $800,000. It's not like all my stuff was inbound. So I can either make more in a highly predictable way, I can make less, but it's highly predictable, or more, but unpredictable. And we always needed more. Trust me, I know how ironic it was that I couldn't create, predictable revenue, or at least enough for my family for those years. And I had to stick to unpredictable consulting. There's always elements of predictability in some parts of it, but the bulk of it was, let's see what happens here with projects and speaking. Again, that was that path I had to walk, like what felt important, what do we have to do? And, I've learned a lot through that, which again is going back into, this next book on money, which maybe let's cover that for a minute and then have to wrap up.
Yeah.
So, yes, we're still in the midst of it. It's income operating system book, hopefully kind of, spring 2025. But I have this guy, Matt Smith, who it was his idea. And I was like, that's a great idea. So I'm helping kind of design it and make it a better, and, but the idea is everybody wants to make more money. And I think the subtitle is like, basically earn your way to like be like the 1%. So in the United States, that's like $700,000 or $800,000 a year, I think. No, I think he said 300,000. In the UK, it's a lot less. Anyway, the idea is, okay, how do you make a lot more money? And one of the key ideas is this, again, 3 ways to make money: employment, freelancing, investing. Okay, businesses, we're going to lump mostly into that investing side. So that's kind of in this bucket. Pros and cons of each, right? Because there's a lot of older people who've been in safe jobs for a long time who feel like jobs are safe. Freelancing and starting your own business or investing can be risky. However, jobs are risky too, because you can get fired, or if things change, you get let off, and so on. With freelancing, lots of younger people think, jobs are for losers, don't want to sell my time, and I'm going to do build my thing. And well, good luck, because it's hard to build your own freelancing, with freelancing, consulting, whatever, all that lump of services into something where you can support yourself and, well, a family, and it's unpredictable. So there's pros and cons. Pros, you can design a product in 5 minutes on a Word doc. Cons are you might not have regular income. And pros and cons of investing, which could be, stocks, bonds, businesses, and so on. So pros and cons of all these ideas, hey, people can kind of pick the right tool for where they are. And the basic recipe, because again, this world is really confusing, is to say, start with employment. So get a full or part-time job based on what you need. Part-time job, sure, or a remote, even full-time. And then once you kind of have some stability there and you feel like, okay, I got this, start adding freelancing. Freelancing can mean lots of different things. It could be consulting, gigging, Upwork, who knows. And my personal opinion is that freelancing for most people isn't even about making money or lots of money, because it's hard, is to learn entrepreneurial skills. Because to do that, you have to force yourself to learn, things like sales or marketing or servicing customers and all, and over time, because this is probably over the course of years, not months, you can kind of ease into investing, starting with index funds or the equivalent, because that's kind of like relatively safe and simple. And as you start to build your confidence and income and other things, you can start looking at other steps, whether you invest more in your turning freelancing into like a business, or your investments into, buying or investing in a business, which is another form of investing. And kind of over time, 5 or 10 years, try to build your wealth. It might even be long for some people. The idea is to give people clarity and to do it in as unbiased a way as possible. Like, we're not trying to sell stuff. It's just trying to help people, like you said, to have fewer, better choices to see where are you, what's next, and to realize, you see all this $1 million in 30 days stuff online, but come on, like, people win the lottery. It's like someone saying, hey, get a gold medal in 30 days. Do some people win gold medals? Yeah, lots of people do. Are you going to be a millionaire this year? No. Are they selling that to sell you something? Yes. Let's just be honest. They're more concerned with them making money than with you actually getting result. And why do they care about you getting a result? So they can look good. Do they actually care about you? Probably.
Exactly.
No. That's the gist.
I like it. And, this has been remarkable. And we made it very personable rather than going into the different strategies and tactics and frameworks about how to go to market and all those different things. But I'd love to
probably be different in 3 months anyway with AI,
Yeah, and I was going to go into that, but I'm grateful that you spent time with us. I have a WhatsApp group with Jeffrey Gitomer, Keenan, all these guys that Mark Roberge, that are on this podcast, but only for the guys who joined this podcast. I'd love if you're open to joining that and connecting with you again. And if you'd give me your address, I'd love to not to stalk you, but give you a gift, man, to send you a gift. Some swag, whatever, and actually have another conversation when you have time, potentially about advisory or partnership. I do have a software company. I have bootstrapped it. This podcast is season 2. It's doing really well. I've gotten like 65, 70 episodes already. I only released 1, and I'd love to see how we can collaborate. I see you as a leader in the industry of what you do, and I really do appreciate your time. I think beyond just business advice, there's a lot of golden nuggets about life advice that is just as important for us to put out there as all the successes you've created. So I'm grateful.
Yeah, I enjoyed chatting. So thanks for reaching out, and I'll send you my info on all those levels. And
however I can promote you or the books or whenever we release this. I had Liz Elting on. She built translation.com. She's a billionaire, right? And different individuals. And I'm not dropping names. I'm just referencing that we actually released the podcast in alignment with her latest book and provided her with a lot of posts so she didn't have to do it, just to help her out in gratitude of jumping on the show.
Sure. Yeah. Well, hopefully this iOS book will come out in April, I think, is the target. I'm not sure if we'll hit that, but I really feel like that book the goal is to help a lot of people with it. So
yeah, I'm actually considering, because I've wrote the draft for Next Level Sales, and I haven't decided whether I'm going to call it the sales machine, take your sales to the next level, or how to build and scale a multi-million-dollar sales teams. Because that's my expertise, is building and scaling sales teams, similar to yours. I just didn't do it in the United States, and I did it knocking on your door.
yeah,
right?
I think it'd be, really valuable, and I would play that international angle up, because there's tons of sales books, sales machine, this, that, the other in the States in English for people who are selling in the States to, so on. So if you're overseas and culture,
and I spoke, I'm sure you've heard of the World Economic Conference, and I spoke at the equivalent called Horasis in Vietnam. And the lingo before, and this is really funny, before COVID, I was invited there and I was one of the leaders, and all of the lingo and and the terminology and what they were talking about, the leaders in advertising and marketing and sales around the world for Southeast Asia was O2O. And I'm like, I didn't get the memo. What's O2O? And they're like, the future of companies is going to be those companies that can go online to offline and offline back to online, because the world is full of noise, like what you were saying. People have more choices. They're more distracted. It's becoming a lot of noise. And our biggest client, we met them at a meeting, at a conference, offline, because they're inundated. A lot of people are inundated, and you can inundate people with AI. Thousands of messages in a minute.
Welcome to the future.
That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and refer a friend. And if you want even more value, go to thesalesmachine.com, click on resources, and there's tons of resources there to increase profits and drive performance in your business. Right on, come on.